This is part one of a two-part presentation of a talk given to the Eco Forum 2010 conference in Sydney on February 24th. In this presentation, I will show how we can reduce the level of greenhouse gas emissions while all becoming wealthier. It is possible to make profitable investments in renewable energy without increasing the price of energy. To show you how, let us first look at the cost elements when we produced energy. Energy production is a capital-intensive industry. The cost components of all forms of energy are taxation, repayments, interest and profits, or trip costs, followed by the running or production costs. This diagram shows us the ratio of repayments, green, interest, red, and running costs, blue, to produce energy under today's financial system. For renewable energy, almost all the costs are financial charges of interest and repayments. Running costs of burning fossil fuel are relatively higher because we have to pay for the fuel to burn. In this graph, the vertical axis is cents per kilowatt hour. Unless we address the interest and repayments cost, it is going to be very difficult to encourage investments in most renewables. As finance costs are man-made, they can also be man-unmade, and we will now examine what effect reducing finance cost has on the profitability of renewables. The following graphs are calculated with the following assumptions. To normalize variable output, we calculate the capital cost for the equivalent continuous production of energy, an interest rate on loans of 6%, a 1 cent per kilowatt hour to cover maintenance and administrative costs, and we assume we can sell energy at the factory gate for 6 cents per kilowatt hour. This graph shows that if we eliminate interest costs and repay our loans over the life of the asset, renewables can be as profitable as fossil fuel energy. Once you have built a renewable energy plant, it becomes a money-making machine. If you reinvest your repayments, it becomes a compounding money-making machine. Because the sources of renewable energy are large, the demand for high-quality energy has no limit, and the value of energy will never reduce. We will use as much as we can produce, and we can keep the cost well above the cost of production, and people will still buy. The other way of increasing investment in renewables is to increase the price of energy by imposing a charge on the burning of fossil fuels. This can be done in many ways. It can be done with a carbon tax, with carbon credits, or with emissions permits. Whatever way it is done, it increases the price of all energy. These extra charges are included to cover the finance costs. The price of energy will have to at least double and probably triple to encourage investors to develop large-scale renewable energy sources. To achieve a low-cost, low-carbon future, all we have to do is to give zero-interest loans to our citizens and require them to invest those funds to build renewable energy plants and invest in ways to save energy. To find out how to do this, we have to understand about the creation of money. When we give a loan, we create money by issuing credit. Governments do it by issuing bonds to themselves and then selling those bonds. Banks do it by giving loans backed by monetizable assets. When we monetize an existing asset, in effect, we sell part of the asset, and the new owner, the bank, expects to get paid for the use of the asset. This is done through the interest on money. In Islamic countries, it is done through rent on the asset. If a bank creates money by monetizing an asset, it also destroys the money when the loan is repaid. Banks do not have to create money to lend. They can, if they wish, lend money in accounts and not destroy the money when it is repaid. We rarely create money by monetizing future assets, but there is no accounting reason for not monetizing a future asset. However, if we monetize future assets, we cannot justify charging interest on the loan because the asset does not yet exist. Part ownership of the future asset goes to the bank. The bank issues money, but the money should not earn interest on the money because the future asset is not yet earning, and so it cannot pay the interest. In our present economic system, monetizing future assets is achieved through equity. People save money and supply it to a company to build the asset. What this means is that new assets are financed from savings and not from loans. Finance equity is much more expensive than finance from loans because there are fewer savings than there are potential loans, and because equity is a double charge, one for the interest on loan money and one to compensate the saver for not spending the money on consumption. Equity finance is 20% plus for most new projects. This means it is more expensive to build an asset than it is to buy exactly the same existing asset, not because of the risk, but because of the way we organize our monetary system. We do not give equity loans, let alone zero interest equity loans, but we could if we can solve the problems of trust, distribution, and compliance. For zero interest loans to work, money must not earn interest until it is spent, and loans must be repaid. For loans to be repaid, they must return a profit. There is no accounting or economic reason not to give zero interest loans to create new assets. The reason we don't are historical, and because creating loans, and with it money, for non-existent assets is easily abused. Under the existing system, the bank creates a loan and the money at the same time and charges interest on the money immediately. With zero interest loans for equity, the bank still creates a loan, but the money is a special sort of money. The money is restricted while it is in the borrower's account and earns no interest. When the money is invested in ways to, say, reduce greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere, it can then earn interest if the receiver of the money can find a bank to accept the money. It is easy to set up a system where money does not earn interest. Investing the money appropriately is much more difficult. To this end, we need to create a system that will guarantee that most loans will be profitable and that borrowers will comply with the rules and restrictions on the money. Our existing banking system is complex and is highly regulated in an attempt to stop the creation of too much money. It has failed miserably, as evidenced by the global financial crisis. Any system to replace some of the creation of money through zero interest loans is itself going to be relatively complex. Let me repeat. For zero interest loans to work, loans must be repaid and there must be zero interest on the money created as a result of the loan.